and I'll invite everyone to come into the meeting now, and you're live.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Morning. We're just waiting for everyone to join us.
Hang on, Jenny, I'm just getting in now. Sorry.
I will be reminding everyone to put themselves on mute, please.
On mute. Oh, I've lost it.
Okay, everybody, it is just gone 10 o'clock and I believe we're all present. Can I welcome you all? Welcome all councillors, officers and members of the public and those viewing on YouTube this morning. My name is Councillor Amanda Rigby. I'm the chair of this subcommittee. I will now introduce the other members of the subcommittee and ask them to confirm for the video that they are present. Councillor Steve Hedges, are you present?
I am.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Sally Davis.
Present.
Perfect, thank you very much indeed. Also present are Terrell Wallin. Just give us a wave, Terrell.
Present, Chair.
Thank you. Carrie, who is our Senior Licensing Officer. Carrie Ann Evans, who's our Legal Representative.
Good morning.
Thank you. And Mark Durnford, who is our Democratic Services Officer.
Good morning, Chair.
Morning, everybody. Okay. I need to read this bit out for you because this meeting is being held under the Local Authorities and Police and Crime Panel's Coronavirus Flexibility of Local Authority and Police and Crime Panel Meetings, England and Wales, Regulations 2020. The Council has agreed a protocol to cover virtual meetings, and this meeting will operate in line with that protocol. This meeting has the same status and validity as a meeting held in the Guildhall. Can I remind all councillors, officers and members of the public to keep background noise to a minimum, to only speak one person at a time and not speak over others. Please always mute your microphones when you're not speaking and then unmute when you're invited to speak. Please indicate if you wish to speak by using the chat facility on Zoom by typing MIS, may I speak, and you'll be called to speak in turn. Because of the nature of this meeting, I will also go round people and ask them if they wish to make any more comments or wish to ask any more questions. So if you struggle with the chat facility, I will also offer you an opportunity proactively to make your comments. If a member of the subcommittee has to leave the meeting, then please draw my attention to this by using the chat facility, as the meeting will need to adjourn as 3 members are required at all times. When returning to the meeting, please also draw my attention to this in the same way. Members should also inform me if they lose connection and miss any part of the meeting. Now, what I would do were we to be sitting physically in the Guildhall, so I shall do it here as well, is I'll just check who we have with us. So could I see if Ed Taylor is here?
Yes, present.
Thank you very much. Dr. Jennifer Sleep.
Sorry, I'm sharing a laptop with Mrs. Valerie Lockley.
Okay, so you've got, sorry, who have you got with you?
Valerie Lockley, Mrs. Valerie Lockley.
So I've got Dr. Jennifer Sleep and Mrs. Valerie Lockley together.
Yep.
And do I also have David and Jeanette Carr?
Oh.
I think I can see them, but they're struggling to take mute off. You're on mute.
Is that better?
I can now hear you, but I can't see you. There we go. That's perfect. So you're both here. Thank you. If you could remute yourselves now, please, that would be very useful.
Okay.
Thank you. So, item 2, apologies for absence and substitutions. Mark, do we have any apologies for absence or substitutions?
No, thankfully, Chair, you're all present.
Perfect. Declarations of interest. Councillor Hedges, do you have any declarations of interest? No. Councillor Davis, do you?
No.
I do. If you could just bear with me for a minute. I was copied on an email to officers by Councillor Craig, where she raised queries related to planning and made a few observations in relation to the licensing application. All I did was acknowledge receipt of the email, and I did not enter into any conversation at all. I've disregarded any observations made by Councillor Craig, as they're not a valid representation in the application. And I do have an open mind before me, and I won't make my mind up until I've seen all the evidence that's put forward today in the relevant report and all the material factors within it. I also, oh, I'm coming back now. I also have in the past met with David and Jeanette Carr when I was councillor for the area and did some work with them. I'm going back quite a while, and in no way does that preclude me from sitting on this panel. And I've certainly not had any conversations with them about this particular application. Item 4, announce any urgent business agreed by the chair. I've not been told of any urgent business. Item 5, minutes of the previous meeting. I believe the only two of us who are at that are myself and Councillor Hedges. Councillor Hedges, do you believe they are a correct record?
I believe they are a correct record, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. And I also believe they are a correct record. So for the record, can we just put our hands in the air to vote to say they are correct? That's carried. Thank you very much indeed. Now, the licensing procedure. Let me see if I can go through this. I just want to go through what we're going to do for everybody. If at any stage it becomes unclear, please do type MIS in the chat box, and then I will re-explain where we are. So what will happen next is that there'll be a summary or an update by Terrell as the licensing officer to introduce the matter to us. And then the applicant, in this case, I believe Mr. Taylor, will present the case and at this stage may call witnesses. Then the applicant can be questioned by the members of the committee, i.e. Councillor Davis, Councillor Hedges and myself, and may also be questioned by anyone else who's done a representation and is registered to speak. Then the people who have registered to speak also get a chance then to make their case, and they may also call witnesses. And then at that stage, the members of the committee and the applicant has the chance to ask questions to the other parties. Just in the interest of fairness, we try and give equal amounts of time. I'm sure you've all seen the protocol. We try and give equal amounts of time to both sides in the issue. So the applicant will have 20 minutes and the other parties will have 20 minutes to share between them. Were the responsible authorities to have made an input at that stage, we would question them, but they have not. And then we go in reverse order, so the other parties then have 5 minutes in which to sum up. The applicant sums up. We adjourn as a committee with our legal representative, come to our decision, and then we call you all back in and we give you our decision and the legal reasons why. Is there anyone who is unclear about what we're doing? I'm seeing a few smiles and a couple of light nods, so I think we're okay. As I say, if at any stage we get somewhere and you think I don't know if I'm meant to be speaking now or not speaking now or whatever, please just say, may I speak, and we will sort it. So all that being said, may I hand over to Terrell to present the application. Thank you. Terrell, you're on mute. You need to unmute yourself.
Thank you. Sorry, my tab bar didn't work as it did last time. Before I introduce it, Claire, we just seem to have lost Valerie and Jennifer.
No, we haven't. I can see them perfectly happily.
Okay, I've
They may
lost.
not be on your.
Okay.
We've got too many people to be all on one screen. I think they may have dropped off one of your screens, but I can see them. I promise you.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. This hearing is to determine a variation of premises licence application made under Section 34 of the Licensing Act 2003 in respect of Provenist, the Tramshed, Beehive Yard, Bath, BA15BB. The application is proposing to add the sale of alcohol for consumption off premises from 0800 hours and to 2145 hours daily. The current premises licence, as detailed in Annex B of the report, currently authorises the sale of alcohol for consumption on premises only, and the on-premise is a licensed cafe located within the Neptune retail outlet. The application was duly served on all the relevant responsible authorities and advertised within the Bath Chronicle. During the statutory period, 8 representations of objection were received from other persons residing within proximity of the premises. They expressed concern that the applicant's proposals to consume alcohol off premises within the external areas of Neptune is likely to have an adverse effect on both the public safety and prevention of public safety and prevention of public nuisance licensing objectives. Please note that no representations were received from the responsible authorities. No representation of objection was received with regards to the sale of alcohol off premises in respect of alcohol deliveries, and issues regarding the landlord's covenant is a private matter and not a matter for this committee. Since the application was submitted, the designated premises supervisor has left the business. As far as I'm aware, there is no designated premises supervisor currently nominated. I'm sure Ed would be able to confirm that. And the premises has been advised that until such a person is nominated on a licence, no sale of alcohol may take place. The committee is asked to determine the application.
Thank you very much indeed, Terrell. Where are we? So, Ed, I think you are next, and the time, according to my watch, is 10:15. So you have till 25 to 11 to present your case. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, and hello and welcome to everybody. So, as Terrell's just alluded to, our previous supervisor, Paul Dugdale, has left the business. He left 2 weeks ago, and I've taken over the Provenance Cafe. So I'm currently head of operations at Neptune, and Provenance has now fallen under me. Paul was the license holder. When he left, we have now got our supervisor who's based in the Provenance in Bath. She's on site 5 days a week, Olivia. She is now past her training, so she will now be put as a nominated person on the license. Obviously, until that happens, we will not be selling alcohol on the premises. The purpose of us to request the extension to use our outdoor space is purely based around trying to get more covers to help us to continue the business. The Provenance is an ancillary business to help enhance the experience of Neptune. It is a loss-making business. It's never made money. It's there purely to enhance the experience. Naturally, with the new government guidelines with social distancing, we are struggling with our amount of space we have. We used to have a capacity of 28 covers in our licensed area. That has been significantly reduced down to 14. So we would like to use our terrace space, which is currently being used as an outdoor show area for our garden furniture. It will continue to be our outdoor showroom area for our garden furniture, but we would like to use it as a dual purpose to have area for people to enjoy their lunch or breakfast and a glass of wine whilst they're enjoying their lunch. This is slightly different to a normal, I suppose, licensing request because it's not a pub, it's not a bar, it's never going to be. It is purely down to people come and have a light bite to eat and have a glass of wine as and when they require it. It's not, we don't have promotions on alcohol. We're never going to have promotions. It's not one that we're going to have crowds of people. We don't foresee our footfall in growing any more than what it was previously. It is purely to help with our guidance from the government to allow us to continue to trade with social distancing enabled. I don't know if I can, but I was going to share the screen with just some, so you can visually see where we've got to. Saying I currently can't do that.
Yes, I don't know if you can. I mean, you'd have to be made host of the meeting, I think, for the technology to work. And on top of that, I'm just going to ask our legal representative. I'm trying to think what we would do were we to be in a physical meeting and replicate that. I'm not certain we would allow you to do that in a physical meeting. So if you can't do it in a physical meeting, I don't think you can do on that. But can I just check with Carrie Ann that I am in fact correct?
Thank you, Chair. I'm just trying to double check myself, but I'd have to check the provisions around introducing additional information at this stage. I'm going to check that, but Terrell might actually be able to assist me with an immediate answer. If you can't, Terrell, please don't worry, but I'm just looking now.
I could see Terrell waving
Fine.
gently. So,
Yeah.
Terrell, can I ask you as well?
So any additional information circulated in advance of the hearing is fine. Anything you want to introduce on the day has to be with the agreement of all parties and obviously with the agreement of the chair.
That's absolutely fine. Don't worry, it's not a problem. I was just going to give you some visuals, and like you say, I should have sent those over previously. Just some visuals of where we were versus where we are, just so you can kind of picture that in your head. But like I said, that's the whole purpose of this. We've put in the request initially to go to 9:45. We have the only reason why we put it in with a late finish is if we do an event in store, so we can run the Provenist alongside of that. I am more than happy to come to an agreement that we may alter that and put it to 6 p.m. If that helps with the residents' concerns around what we're doing. We also, as we've said, we'd like to use looking at alternative ways to trade. So not only on premises, but also we'd like to look at options where we can allow people to enjoy the Provenist at home. So we could look at in the future of doing home deliveries, which would in turn allow them to maybe purchase alcohol from us to enjoy with their lunch or with their dinner. The whole purpose of this is to, along with the whole of the Neptune business and Provenist business, is to be flexible with our workings. We've all got new guidelines to meet and to work to. Without us being able to continually trade on the numbers we were trading on, although we were loss making, any further losses will mean that we would need to potentially close the Provenist, which would give a job loss of about 7 to 10 people. Obviously, we're trying to avoid that happening, and we're trying to continue to offer that ancillary purpose of the Provenist in store. We have, I'm aware of some access concerns from some of our residents, which we are more than happy to work with our residents on that. We've got a meeting booked with our residents actually next Friday, or some of the residents next Friday, the 17th, to talk through our plans, what's going on, and also outside of that, other concerns that they may have with the building. We also were kind of misled, I suppose, from what I've been told from Paul, my previous counterpart. We used the terrace last year because we were informed at the time that we could do this. So we used it last year with zero complaints from anybody in the proximity. And actually people in the proximity used our services last year on the terrace, which was more than welcoming and great to see. So that once we found out that we needed to extend the license to include the outside space, which is why we put the application in. We've got many plans which we can share around how we are going to fit in line with the COVID-19 restrictions. With spatial distancing, sanitising spaces, etc., all in place. I think that pretty much covers off where I am, to be honest with you, without me garbling on. So I'm open to questions. Sorry, Councillor, you're on mute.
Sorry, I only do it twice every meeting, and I've done it twice already, so that's it, no more. Sorry about that. No, thank you for that, and it gives us some more time for questions. That's very appreciated. I'll go to questions from the members of the committee first. Councillor Davis.
Yeah, I just want to double check on, I clarify what you said. You did say you were quite happy to look at going to 6 o'clock in the evening, didn't you? If necessary. Okay, that was what I just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Is that your only question, Councillor Davis? Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Hedges.
Sally asked the question I was going to ask, so no, Chair.
Okay, I may have one question, but I'll go round the other parties first. Dr. Jennifer Sleep, have you any questions? You need to unmute yourself, she says, feeling strong because she did it herself wrong.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to question with Ed the date on which the variation application was submitted, because it was not posted until May the 22nd, which of course I'm wondering, you know, the case he's making is something to do with coronavirus and distancing and needing more space to operate the business. But I suspect their application was lodged long before the lockdown issues were ever raised, so is not pertinent here. So I wonder, can he clarify that for me?
I would need to double check the dates, but it was not put in prior to the end of March. It was put in after lockdown.
Mm-hmm.
Could I maybe, to be helpful, Terrell, would you have a note of when it was at least registered on our system, even if that wasn't quite the same date as it was applied for?
Hi, Chair. I don't have the date with me, but I think it was something around about the 22nd
of
May.
Okay. I think that's the best
And
answer we're going to be able to give you for now.
But the notice is required to be displayed for 28 consecutive days, and it was, because the last date for reps was extended to the 18th of June.
Yeah, I think the purpose of the question wasn't around had we done our process correctly, because
No.
I'm sure we have. It was about when was it actually applied for. Does that answer your question as well as we
Yes. Can I ask one more, please?
You may.
The issue of no complaints were raised by residents last year. That's because we weren't living here last year. There was only one person out of 6 apartments that were actually occupied. So it's not surprising that they didn't.
Can I stop you?
Yes, of course.
This is very clearly the time for you to ask questions, not to make comments.
Okay, that I understand. Thank you.
You will have your time to make your own case later.
That's
so is
fine.
that the end of your questions?
Yes, absolutely. At the moment, thank you.
Okay. Mrs. Lockley, have you got any questions?
Thank you, Councillor Ribicki. Yes, one question. I just wanted to clarify from Ed. Did he say that at some point last year, some of us residents had enjoyed sitting out on the terrace?
Yes, I wasn't actually in the business myself last year, but I've been informed that there were, I don't know who, but there were residents or a resident that did enjoy our service.
To my knowledge, none.
Is this going to be a question?
Oh, no. No, it isn't. No.
But please feel free to say what you want to say when you're making your case.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. I will.
David and Jeanette Carr, it's now your turn. Have you got any questions?
Yes, I have one question. The Neptune representative said, as I understand it, that the outside area was a display area for their garden furniture. Does he understand this is also the sole entrance to our residential flats. The area serves a dual purpose. It's a shared entrance forecourt between the residents and Neptune. I just want to ask him if he understands that point.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that's the end of all the questions, and I don't now have a further significant question. So just to keep everyone informed, we're now moving on to representations from the other parties, which means Dr. Sleep, Mrs. Lockley and Mr. and Mrs. Carr, you have 20 minutes between you, which by my watch takes us up to 11:15. So it's entirely up to you if you want to share the time differently or do a different order. That's entirely your call, but I'll hand over to Dr. Sleep for the other parties 20 minutes to start now.
Thank you, Councillor Rigby, for excellent chairmanship, I have to say. I don't want to repeat anything I have already put in writing for the committee's consideration. I just wanted to raise a couple of, or focus on a couple of issues. That this is the first time in its history that this tramshed building has been converted for residential use, occupied by people who consider it to be their home. There are 6 Neptune apartments already occupied in this beautiful building and another 7 to be completed next year. This changes the ambience of Beehive Yard to a largely residential zone. It is also an echo chamber, being virtually surrounded by high buildings which bounce the sound, so increasing volume. Added to this, the way in which voices sound carry in outside spaces is especially fueled by alcohol. This application to serve alcohol in the courtyard garden, possibly until 9:45, places unacceptable intervention in the everyday lives of people who call this their home. And I noticed that this was not considered at all in Ed's presentation. And then a short addition to the issue of safety. This very morning, given a cool, wet day, I have been outside, and the current outside furniture has a seating capacity of 30 people, which probably exceeds the internal capacity of Provenist. And Ed has already said their capacity would be 28. So indeed it would exceed it, so increasing a huge number of customers. This highlights a potential problem for we residents and the risks of working our way around 30 people relaxing in large furniture outside our front door. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sleep. Mrs. Lockley. I
Thank
love the
you.
way that you're organising this between you. It's very interesting.
Thank you, thank you. I just wanted to, in my representation, I was talking about the safety issue, particularly for disabled people. And I really wanted to point out that my concerns that we should have good access. Neptune have said in a recent email that clear access is important to them for their customers and for us, but they have already demonstrated, even to disabled people, hugely demonstrated that this is just lip service. They are not taking seriously, in my view, the safety issue. When I moved here, my husband and I, we bought here because my husband had become disabled for 3 years by a very complex and rare neurological condition. And he was unable to walk unaided, and with aids could only walk a very few steps. So he was mainly in a wheelchair. And we had the assurances, and I'm going back now to the middle of 2018 when we saw the apartment and decided that this would be easy access. We were assured that the entrance at the lower level would be available to us. All of the scaffolding, all of the works would have been done. I asked on several occasions because the scaffolding remained and the door was inaccessible. but they said no, that an absolute assurance. And then shortly before Christmas in 2018, we were notified that it would not be available for the whole of 2019. Now, we had to move in before the end of February. This caused my husband an immense amount of distress and stress, as you can imagine, and me too. We could not imagine how we would come and go. And when I asked the Neptune people how they thought we would manage, we had exchanged contracts, we had no option but to come here. At that point, I didn't even know that bollards are put up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and all weekend. So it would have been very, very difficult. We'd been able to choose our car parking space beside the lower door, where my husband and I could get him out of the car and into his wheelchair and straight into the building. But Neptune have shown, by their complete dismissal of all of this as being in any way important, a total regard for disabled people. And I have mentioned before, I wrote to the owner of Neptune, John Hilditch, last year about this way that we had been treated and the way that disability in particular.
Could I just make a quick point before you carry on?
Yes.
I absolutely promise you, in no way am I unsympathetic to what you are saying.
No.
However, from the licensing regime's point of view, what we have to look at are the 4 licensing objectives.
Yes. Yes.
And although what you're saying, my heart goes out to you in terms of that must be very difficult for you and your husband to manage. The 20 minutes you've got, you probably would be well advised to concentrate on licensing objectives, because they're the only things that we can take into account when we're making our decisions.
Yes, I understand. I was only trying to emphasize the licensing objective as I see it, as safety. I don't think that Neptune are considering the safety of all, because we have to come and go through that entrance door. It is our main front door to the building, and I feel it's a safety issue, and people could be harmed, and very, very difficult, if not impossible, for disabled people to be safe in this environment. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. and Mrs. Carr.
Thank you. Excuse me if my voice fails. I have some problems with my vocal cords. Sometimes I croak a bit. The main point I want to make is that the application refers to drink being consumed on the outside area of the premises. And as I understand it, the premises in question are the Providence Cafe. But I don't believe the Providence Cafe has an outside area. What was once an outside catering area under a previous planning regime, when this was a bar restaurant, was given up by Neptune when they applied to change the use of the ground floor of the building from a bar restaurant to general retail. Later on, they put in an application to landscape that area, which greatly reduced the total area available and resulted in an entrance forecourt with an average width along the front of the shop of only 4 meters. Now, this 4-meter strip is the only entrance, the only ground floor entrance to our flats. And it's also the only entrance to the 3 sets of double doors that go into the large Neptune store. We're already sharing that narrow entrance corridor as a Neptune furniture display, the main entrance for the store and the sole entrance for 6 apartments. It was since Neptune gave up the planning permission for bar restaurant use, there has been no legal use of this area for the service of food and drink. And I think they're trying to have it 2 ways. They can't voluntarily give up the bar restaurant use of the outside space and then call it the outside seating area of the restaurant. it isn't an outside seating area. It's a landscaped, narrow access strip. And just to put that in context, in order to get into our flat, we have to go through a gate at the end of the forecourt, walk 20 metres to the communal flat entrance, past the frontage of the shop. The narrowest point of that entrance is 3.6 metres only. In it already are a number of large sofas and tables on display. When they briefly started serving food and drink there last year, we often had to push our way past busy tables full of people who were sitting, and as people do when they're eating and drinking, they push their chairs back, they put their possessions, their dogs, their baby buggies, their bags around them. And on several occasions, when we had bags of shopping, or on one occasion, wheelie suitcases, we had to say to people, excuse me, can you pull your chair in so we can squeeze past? Naturally, they were irritated, as I would be if I was eating in a restaurant, and a lot of people tried to push their way through it. This is a narrow space. It was laid out by Neptune as an entrance forecourt. It is no longer an outside eating and drinking area, and it's quite wrong to try and shoehorn this use into what is essentially an entrance pathway. Speaking personally, I'm registered blind, so I've got to pick my way already through the fixed garden furniture quite carefully. I frequently bump into things and they often move the furniture display. And I have to be very careful about sighting my way through to find a gap. When people are occupying those tables, the area of the furniture expands, because tables where people pull out the chairs and are using occupy about twice the width of an unoccupied table with the chairs pushed underneath. So it really isn't practical for us, for the sole entrance into our flats, to have to squeeze our way through an outdoor restaurant. We would never have bought a flat on that basis. And Neptune gave us no indication at all during the sales negotiations that they had any intention of turning this nicely landscaped, narrow entrance forecourt into an outdoor restaurant. I think it's totally inappropriate. And there's another point I'd like to raise. They are claiming that one of the main uses will be off sales of alcohol for delivery around Bath by vehicle. There is no loading dock for the premises.
Could I stop you there for a minute, Mr. Carr?
Yes,
no
sorry.
one has raised any objections to the off sales, therefore you can't introduce new evidence at this stage. So we're not actually debating that today. We're just debating the piece about alcohol sales on the garden, or call it what we will, the access premises outside.
Can I quickly reference then the current COVID situation? Because I'm in the most vulnerable category of NHS category. I've been completely shielded for 3 months. Now we're venturing out of our flat for the first time. The prospect of having to squeeze our way through occupied tables full of strangers is a nightmare infection risk. There is no other way out of our flat apart from squeezing our way through this narrow 4-meter strip where people will be sitting, eating and drinking. And the consumption of alcohol will only mean more people being less careful. That's all I wanted to say, really. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you very much for your input. The first people who are allowed to ask questions are the members. I'll go in the opposite order this time. Councillor Hedges, have you got any questions?
Yes, Chair. Firstly, to the second lady that came on. I can't remember her name.
Mrs. Lockley was the second lady.
Did she have a written assurance that the entrance would be, as she states, and to the gentleman at the end, I think that as well as being a licensing consideration, what he's saying about the entrance and the use of it is maybe also a planning consideration that maybe he needs to check with planning on whether what rights he has or hasn't got, which is obviously nothing to do with this committee. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay, Mrs. Lockley, would you like to respond to the first question?
Yes, I'm afraid I do not have any written assurance. The team from Neptune who were dealing with me, one person in particular, was very, very keen that we had conference telephone calls. And towards the end of 2018, I started to absolutely insist that everything must be put in email, and I would no longer be having agreements over the telephone because they kept trying to renege on all sorts of things. So I'm very sorry that I didn't have the assurance, but my solicitor understood that I had the assurance, and the search agent that I had used to find and purchase the apartment, he knew all about it. So there were people who were, if you like, witness to what was expected, but there was nothing specifically in writing about that entrance. I was walked through it. I was allowed to choose the parking space that would help us most, but nothing was put in writing.
Okay,
Thank you very much. Mr. Carr, can you answer the question that Councillor just put forward about awareness of the planning side as well as licensing?
Well, yes, there are covenants, of course, in our lease, which promise unobstructed access and quiet enjoyment of the flat. But I don't think it's been made fully clear that when the first 5 flats in this development were sold, there was no inkling of any cafe of any kind, indoor or outdoor. So it's not a question which would have naturally arisen. We assumed we were buying an apartment which shared a nice landscaped access pathway with a rather upmarket furniture and design store. The question of a cafe didn't come into it. And I'd like to make another point, if I may. When Neptune applied to change the planning use from bar restaurant to retail, the delegated report by Baines applauded the decision and said it would be an improvement in amenity for local residents. So Baines were in favour of this change. And it seems now
I think the
reversed. Sorry,
the danger we have slightly is getting, and I think that was the subtext to, sorry to interrupt you, but I think that was a subtext to Councillor Hedges' comment, that there are things that planning can look at and there are things that licensing can look at, and also Baines as an entity is also slightly separate as well. So the fact that the planning regime looked at an application and came up with a certain set of recommendations and certain sets of approvals, they have to look at it according to their planning policies. We have to judge things according to the licensing objectives.
Okay.
So I just need you to be clear in your head that what we're saying, we're not saying, we're neither approving nor disapproving of anything the planning regime has said. We're just completely disregarding it and looking at licensing.
Just to finish my answer to the question, we are taking up the planning issue separately with Baines.
Good. Okay, lovely. Councillor Davis, have you any questions?
If it's just one question, Ed Taylor said he was meeting with residents on the 17th, I think it was, and I just wondered if any of the speakers have taken up that offer to meet with him.
I'll go round in order. Dr. Sleep, are you going to be at that event?
Yes, we most certainly have. It's a bit late in the day, actually, given the action that's been taken without any discussion with us, ever, actually. But we are indeed happy to hear what Neptune have got to say and how things might be improved.
Lovely. Mrs. Lockley, are you going to be there?
Yes, I would like to say I half expected that this might come up, that Neptune would be applauding themselves for inviting us to a meeting at last, and there was a rush to get the meeting settled before this meeting. That's my cynical view.
Okay, I understand. Mr. and Mrs. Carr, is it something that you will be attending?
Because of my health vulnerability, I'm not ready to go to a meeting with other people yet, but I have arranged to speak to Liz Hall, the lady who called the meeting by phone. In fact, I called her twice yesterday, but I'm still awaiting a reply.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Councillor Davis?
Yes, thank you.
Have you any further questions? No. Okay,
No.
I've got a couple of questions before we move on. And I promise you these are questions. It's going to sound like a statement to begin with, but I just want to check that everybody is on the same page when it comes to understanding what it is that we're actually discussing today. All we can as a licensing committee look at are licensable activities, and we have to judge them according to the licensing objectives. So as an example, in fact, I'd like to ask all the people who made the comment. There were quite a few comments about finding it difficult to go round tables of people who were having a meal, that this was going to be quite big. There is nothing that we are discussing today that stops that from happening. All we are discussing is whether or not sale of alcohol is allowed. That's all we can talk about, because that's the only licensable activity that we're talking about. So are you confident that the case you are making to us is that were we to allow the sale of alcohol, there would be a significant difference in any loss of amenity that you're talking about in terms of not wanting this in the planning regime? I don't mind who goes first, but I want to be clear that we know what we're talking about.
I would say it would have a substantial detrimental effect upon our ability to get home at the end of out of doors, and severely impinge upon our ability to move freely to and from our apartments.
But sorry to be a pain, I am going to push this.
Please.
Is that, why is it worse because alcohol is being sold than it would be if it was just food, but people weren't allowed to have alcohol with their meal? I don't understand the case you're making to say not to sell alcohol.
No, I suppose I've gone back to the planning on whether this should be out there at all in the first place. I'm more concerned about the noise issue with alcohol, because the people speak more loudly, and there could potentially be 30 people sitting out there drinking alcohol, and it's the sound. All my windows happen to face into Beehive Yard. I can hear every word that is said out in that garden, and that can only get louder following alcohol.
Okay, so it's the noise and nuisance because of alcohol that you're concerned with. Has anyone else got any comments before I ask my other two questions? Mrs. Lockley.
Yes, could I just go back rather to Ed Taylor when he was saying that he believed that some of us residents had sat outside and enjoyed the space outside. I don't think that was the case. I was the only person living here from February to August, and I certainly did not enjoy the space. When people were sitting outside, I had a couple of very unfortunate clashes with two young mothers with three small children and a ball being kicked and various things as I was trying to take my recycling out. And what I think is that that was when people were drinking coffee. I think it's an accepted fact that when people are drinking alcohol, they will be more difficult. I was at my most pleasant. I was merely trying to get through and not cause an accident for the little boy with the ball in a very confined space on that occasion. Certainly, to my knowledge, none of us sat outside and enjoyed the space. It was a difficult space to get through and will be more difficult when alcohol is involved.
Okay. So would it be right if I could paraphrase to say that it's already, from the planning perspective, it's not ideal for you and your fear is that it will be exacerbated if
That's
alcohol was also added
absolutely
to the
correct. Yes, absolutely.
In that case, my next question, which was going to be my next question, but it's probably even more relevant now. Again, it's sort of to check your knowledge of what we're doing here, in that licensing is a permissive regime. So we grant a license unless there is evidence that it will stop any of the 4 licensing objectives. And normally that evidence is provided by a responsible authority, so someone like the police. And by its very nature, it is quite difficult to show what evidence there would be for a new application of a license. That does not mean that a license can't be reviewed in the light of experience. So I just want to check to see if there is any hard, solid evidence that you can present to this committee that selling alcohol, well, the sale will actually take part inside, but the consumption of alcohol in this area, is there any evidence that the consumption of alcohol in this area has damaged any of the 4 licensing objectives?
Well, only in that I thought it was already unsafe last year. Unfortunately, I didn't make a formal complaint. I was the only person living here. My husband had died, and I didn't have the strength. I was to deal with so many things, unfulfilled promises, etc. here, that I didn't want to open another can of worms and complain. But I do feel strongly that when people take alcohol, I think it happens to all of us. People get louder, they get merry, and they get more careless. My neighbour David has made the point about buggies, bags, dogs. We had all of that last summer, and children's scooters. It was very difficult, and I think it will be more difficult. I can't actually give you evidence that it will be more difficult, but I think we just all accept really that alcohol makes people perhaps more aggressive and more careless.
Okay. I hope the other 2 members of the committee won't mind if I say on behalf of the committee, please accept our condolences as well. I'm terribly sorry for the loss of your husband. I'm very genuinely sorry.
Thank you, Councillor.
Okay. That ends, I think, the members' questions. Mr. Taylor, have you got any questions for the other parties?
No, I don't have questions. I only have kind of comments, I suppose, or answers, but I think questions is what you're after, so I'll leave it.
It is questions, yes. You have a chance to sum up at the end where you can make any more comments or anything. Can I just recheck then that everybody has asked the questions that they wish to ask? There's no further questions then. Okay, so what we now move on to are the other parties, i.e. Dr. Sleep, Mrs. Lockley and Mr. and Mrs. Carr sum up. This is traditionally about 5 minutes. It's not a time to introduce any new evidence or anything else. It's to respond to anything that you've heard today or to make the final points that you want to get us to consider at the forefront of our mind when we're making our decision. And what I always say to people at this stage, both sides, are the more you can concentrate on the licensing objectives, i.e. the things that we by law have to take into account, the better. So yes. I'll go through you again in order. Dr. Sleep.
Thank you very much. I would just like to reiterate that we have, in raising our objections, tried to focus firmly upon 2 of the 4 recommendations which we are able to use, and one is safety and public nuisance. Which indeed I think are the main thrust. And I want to again emphasize the seating capacity outside of 30 people, and that last year nobody complained because we simply didn't live here then. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Lockley.
Thank you, Chair. I don't think I have anything more to add than I've already said. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. and Mrs. Carr.
Yes, there's one final point that I'd like to make, which is, I understand from the application that the intention is to sell alcohol in open containers on an off-license basis to be consumed in the outside area, i.e. our entrance. Normally, in a licensed premises, there is some supervision of people drinking alcohol. This seems to be a completely unsupervised situation because it's not like a pub or a restaurant where there will be staff supervising the customers. People are being invited to pick up open alcohol, pay for it, and then find a place to drink it, as I understand it. So they'll be doing that in a completely uncontrolled and unsupervised way, which I think is going to lead to more nuisance and more safety risk.
Okay, thank you. I think it would be appropriate at this stage if I ask Carrie-Anne, our legal representative, just to give the legal position of what is the difference between off sales which are in a sealed container and off sales which are in an unsealed container, and how that applies to this particular area. I think that would be helpful for everybody. Carrie-Anne? You're muted, Carrie-Anne. Oh, you're unmuted now.
Chair. I think I'm here now. There is a bit in the statutory guidance which helpfully deals with the scenario in relation to this application. I'll just read that out because it's a very clear summary. So it says, in scenarios where drink orders are taken by a member of staff in the garden or outdoor space, and the member of staff then collects the drinks from the licensed premises and returns to deliver them to the customer, this would be treated as an off sale, and any conditions that relate to off sales would apply. In such cases, it will be not necessary to include the garden or other outdoor space on the plan as part of the area covered by the licensed premises. And also, just because this is a point Mr. Carr has raised, the guidance goes on to say, if the beer garden or other area is to be used for the consumption of off sales only, there is no requirement to show it on the plan of the premises, but the prescribed application form requires the applicant to provide a description of where the place is and its proximity to the premises. So hopefully that deals with it, Chair.
Yes, thank you very much. Again, I appreciate that for a lot of you, this might be the first time you come to something like a licensing committee. So I hope it doesn't feel like I'm trying to teach grandmother to suck eggs, but there are quite strict laws about what we can and can't do. So I think it is useful for me to get our legal advisor just to make you all aware of what the actual law says on this subject. Okay, we go now finally to the applicant. 5 minutes for you, Mr. Taylor, to sum up.
No, thank you. And thank you to our residents as well for sharing your objectives with us. I just want to go back to a couple of things that were raised, not to debate, but just to kind of give an answer really. So the amount of seating outside, I'm happy to review. Yes, it's got a capacity currently of 30 seats out there. Naturally, we will not be using 30 seats at the moment. We have restrictions in place where we cannot use that amount of people. The whole aim of the meeting that we've got next week, and I apologise if you think I brought it up in a way that it kind of shows us in good light. It's not meant that way at all. It was done separately. I took over from Paul a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, and I work very tightly with Liz Hall, who's been in contact with you. We want to build this relationship back up to where it needs to be. I feel very saddened by what you've experienced previously, and that doesn't come into licensing, but we can talk about that next week. But this is just about the Provenist carrying on business through this horrible time that we're all going through, allowing our customers to come and visit us, enjoy a glass of wine whilst they're having their lunch. There's no spirits on sale, there's no pumps in the place. It's purely a glass of red wine, a glass of white wine, or a potential half a pint of beer. That's all we serve on the restaurant menu. So it's not happy hours and doing shots of Sambuca. It's not that type of place, as everybody is fully aware. And I just hope we can continue with the Provenist in the right way and continue to build our relationship as Neptune, as a Provenist, and as you guys as residents. That's all I'd like to say.
Thank you very much. What we're going to do now is ask Mike Curtis, who's the gentleman who's running this Zoom for us, to split us into two rooms. One will be the members of the committee with our legal representative, and we will make our decision. and then we will invite everyone back so you hear our decision and our legal reasons why. Please do, I mean, obviously make yourself a cup of tea or do something, but please don't go too far away, because if we do have another question or there's a point of clarity, we may ask you all back, and we do need to have you all back in the room before we can continue. So, Mr. Curtis, could you please split us into 2 groups, and could you let me know when we are in private session? Thank you.
Yeah. And then
love the background, Mr. Councillor Hodgins, as well. Hedges, sorry.
Thank you. It's done for a reason. If I sit back, halo.
Very good.
I don't know. I did it, but God knows how I did it. I can't remember the fluke.
Well, I worked out how to do it on Teams, but I don't know how to do it on Zoom. So it's
No, people put photos on there and all sorts. I ain't got a clue.
Just remind you,
turn it on, turn it off.
It's still live on YouTube.
Could I ask Mike to confirm when we've got everyone back in the room?
I've only got you on my screen, Amanda, so I'm not sure what's happened.
I think that's because you've not got gallery view up. I'm seeing lots of other people. If you-
Gallery view, okay.
Is that better?
Hang on. Where do I find gallery view? Oh, yes. Yes, I got it there. Okay.
So who's missing? Valerie and Jenny, and who's the other one?
I think we've got, I think if they're both sharing again, I think we've got Dr. Sleep and Mrs. Lockley. Yes, we have. Yeah, I can see you. Carrie Ann, Carr, Taylor.
Valerie.
I think we have everybody.
Chair, everyone is back in the room.
Thank you very much, Mike. Thank you, very appreciated. We've come to our decision, and our decision is that we are going to grant the application as applied for, and our legal representative is going to read out our legal reasons why.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure if you can see me, but as long as you can hear me, that's the main thing. So members have determined, can everyone hear me? Just check.
Yes.
Yes, we can
Great,
hear you.
thank you. Thank you. Members have determined an application to vary the premises licence for Provenist, the Tram Shed, Beehive Yard, Bath, BAB. In doing so, they have taken into consideration the Licensing Act 2003, statutory guidance, the Council's policy, Human Rights Act 1998 and case law. Members are aware that the proper approach under the Licensing Act is to be reluctant to regulate in the absence of evidence.
We've lost you, Carrie Ann.
Address the committee.
Carrie Ann, can you stop? We got as far as members are reluctant in the absence of evidence, and then you completely cut out. Could you go back to the bit where absence of evidence and restart from that bit, please? Or maybe not. Oh dear. Can I make a suggestion, Carrie Ann? If you turn your video off, sometimes that gives you more.
I'm really sorry, it's being quite.
Can you hear me, Carrie Ann? My suggestion is you turn your video off, because sometimes that helps the
Can you hear me
audio.
now?
Can hear you now. But no, can't hear you.
Now.
Can everyone else put their microphones on mute, please?
Right, can you hear me okay now?
That's much better, yes.
Great, thank you. Sorry, it just had a real moment there. Right, so members are aware under the Licensing Act is to be reluctant to regulate in the absence of evidence, and they must only do what is a bit and proportionate on the information before them. The applicant, Ed Taylor, Head of Operations at the Neptune, addressed the committee on behalf of the applicant. He indicated that the purpose of the application is to try and get more covers for the business to enable them to continue to trade with social distancing measures and government guidelines in place. He explained to members that the terrace is currently used as a show area for garden furniture from Neptune, and it is intended with the licence that customers will be able to have lunch or breakfast with a glass of wine or half a pint of beer. The premises do not anticipate greater footfall if the licence is granted, will work with residents regarding concerns over access, and have a meeting with residents scheduled next week to discuss the issues arising. Mr. Taylor indicated to members that the premises do not run alcohol promotions, they're not a pub or bar, and there will be no sale of spirits. Mr. Taylor indicated that the reason for off sales being sought to 9:45 p.m. was to enable events to take place. However, he would be agreeable to reducing the hours for sale of for off sale of alcohol to 6 p.m. if that's helpful to residents. Responsible authorities. There were no representations received from responsible authorities. Interested parties. There have been 8 representations from residents living in the vicinity of the premises, objecting to consumption of alcohol within the external seating area on the basis that this will undermine the prevention of public nuisance and public safety licensing objectives. The interested parties expressed concerns regarding safety and access issues for residents, particularly disabled people, in relation to the external seating area. They indicated that the use of the external area was problematic in any event, but felt that it would be worsened as a result of customers drinking alcohol. Furthermore, they were concerned by the nuisance that would be caused from noise generated by customers sitting in the external seating area and consuming alcohol as late as 9:45 p.m, given that they live in apartments above the premises. Members noted that this variation application was to add the sale of alcohol for consumption off premises to allow the operation of an alcohol delivery service and for customers to consume alcohol purchased in the indoor cafe within the external seating area. Members found that none of the interested parties had objected to off sales for the purpose of the operation of the alcohol delivery service. Concerns and objections centred around the consumption of off sales in the external seating areas. Whilst interested parties raised concerns in relation to planning issues, members reminded themselves that planning and licensing are separate regimes and that the onus is on the applicant to ensure that they have all necessary permissions in place to run their business within the law. Members were mindful that any concerns raised regarding covenants between the landlord and tenant were a private matter and not the remit of the licensing subcommittee, for whom the licensing objectives are paramount. Furthermore, members had sympathy with the interested parties for the concerns raised in relation to access for residents with disabilities. They reminded themselves again, though, that the licensing objectives were paramount in their decision-making for this application. Members understood the concerns raised by the interested parties. However, they did not find on the information before them that the proposed variation application would have a detrimental effect on the licensing objectives raised, which could not be adequately mitigated by the measures offered in the application. Members noted, however, that the interested parties could call for a review of the licence at any time were there to be evidence that the licensing objectives were being undermined. Accordingly, authority is delegated to the licensing officer to issue the licence with conditions consistent with the operating schedule, which members found to be appropriate and proportionate in the promotion of the licensing objectives of prevention of public nuisance and promotion of public safety. Note: members noted that any business that provides good facilities or services to members of the public are required in accordance with the Equality Act 2010 to make reasonable adjustments to ensure their premises are accessible to disabled people. Whilst members did not take the forthcoming meeting into account in reaching their decision, they welcome the fact that the premises representatives are meeting with residents and encourage them to resolve the issues and concerns raised around access. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, and thank everybody for their great input today and for staying online for the amount of time it has taken us to do this in these rather peculiar and different circumstances. That being the case, that is our decision. It will be sent out to everyone concerned, and at 12:10, I now declare this meeting closed. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye now.
And I thank you for excellent chairmanship.
Thank you. That's very kind of you. Thank you.